Welcome to ACTI CMS and TV Wall Setup webinar. Today we're going to go ahead and go over the product architecture of how the CMS fits into the ACTI unified solution, and we're going to go over the basics of setting up the CMS. These webinars are recorded and they will be available on our website under the video clips about a week or so after the webinar is presented. So if you go to www.acti.com, you'll see here under the quick links, there's a button here to the video clips. So once you go into that video clip section of the website, if you just go ahead and search for the word webinar, you'll be able to see the various webinars that we offer along with the most recent ones. Let's go ahead and get started with the product architecture. Just so you know, all of our manuals, all of our firmware, all of our software, it's all available on our website. All you have to do is come to www.acti.com, click on Downloads here at the very top, and let's say you're looking for the manual of the CMS. So here under the global search, you type in the word CMS, you tell the filter that you're looking for a VMS manual, and you'll see here that there's the administrator guide, quick installation guides, etc. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about how this CMS fits into the overall architecture of your system. So a lot of times you already have your NVR servers up and running, right? You have cameras into your NVR server and you're already using that, logging into it, viewing all of your cameras and recordings. But the thing is, once you start getting multiple different NVRs, maybe across on the same site, across various sites, you don't want to have to log into every single NVR individually, right? It taxes your computer, especially you have to see all of them at the same time, and it is you do have to start remembering all of the different IP addresses, et cetera, right? And you want to be able to access various cameras from maybe Site 1 at the same time as Site 2. So that's when you want to start using this CMS, the Central Management System. So as you can see, you can have cameras at an NVR at Site 1, Site 2, Site 3, and you can have them go back to a main CMS server. And at this main CMS server, you can use the CMS workstation to be able to log into all of the NVRs at one time and see all the cameras together within one single CMS. So now, if there is a remote user, they can actually log into the CMS instead of logging individually into every single NVR. And using the CMS, you can log into it using the workstation software, using the Internet Explorer web client, or even from your mobile phone. Okay, so your NVRs, you can put them on the same site as your CMS, or they can all be on different sites, and you can add them into the CMS through the network. Okay. So then what is the TV wall, right? So a lot of times you have various monitors that you want to display your cameras on. And so what you want to do is through the CMS, you can actually use what is called our TV wall server. So this TV wall server does need to go on a separate PC than the NVR, separate PC from the CMS, okay? But once you do, once it's a separate PC, your architecture is going to look something like this. So you have your NVRs on the same site, various sites. You have a separate CMS PC, maybe same site, different site as the NVR, and then you have your various TV walls, maybe on the same site again or on different sites. But what you can do is now from the CMS, you can access these TV walls and put any order of cameras together on these walls for you to display. So for example, maybe monitor 1 is showing all the cameras from site number 1, monitor 2 is showing all the cameras from site number 3, etc. Okay? So again, this TV wall functionality is available only if you have the CMS, okay, because the CMS is what controls all of your various NVRs, all of your various cameras, and that's where your TV wall is going to come into it's going to be much more effective for you. Okay. All right, so then let's talk about the different CMS and TV walls that ACTI offers. Okay, so if we go into the ACTI website, so www.acti.com, you can come into our product selector, okay, and then click on Video Management System and tell it that you're looking for Control Center options. So you'll be able to see that we offer the CMS2 software, and we offer it also on standalone servers. Same with the TV wall, you can grab it just as the software, or you can also grab it as a standalone. So if you want just the software, you'll have to prepare your own server for it. And if you want to find the specs for that, that's all in the administrator manuals of the CMS and the TV wall. So what I just showed you, if you just go to the table of contents, you'll be able to see where that information is located. But just a quick overview, for example, this is what this is what is required for you to prepare your own server to host the CMS software. Okay, same with the TV wall. If we go back up to the table of contents, you can see what the system requirements are for you to host a TV wall server. Okay, but let's say you don't want to prepare your own server. You want to just get a box from us. So that's why we offer the CMS 100 and the CMS 200 standalone CMS servers. So these will already come with the CMS software on it, already has the right specs, and you don't have to worry about trying to prepare your own PC. Okay, same thing with the TV wall. If you don't want to prepare your own TV wall server, you can buy the TV W100 from us. Okay, and if you want to compare the specs, feel free to click on the various products, click on compare, and it'll go ahead and highlight the differences for you in terms of licenses, how many it comes with, right? So the main difference, the software only comes with 2 free licenses, while the standalones will already come bundled with licenses for you. You will not have to purchase other licenses. Unless you want to go higher than 100, higher than 200, the maximum is 800 on the CMS 100, maximum is 1600 on the CMS 200. Okay. Again, if you want a rack mount, you can use the CMS 200. If you just want a tower, you can use the CMS 100. So let's go ahead and talk about the network of the CMS. All right. So the CMS is a Windows system. So when you log into it, you are going to get a regular desktop system just as any Windows PC. So you would set up the network the same way that you would on your computer. So if you go to your Start menu, you go to Control Panel, you go to Network and Internet, you go to the Network and Sharing Center, you go to Change Adapter Settings. So this is where you're going to see all of your network connections on your CMS, and whichever network you have plugged into back into your router, you can go ahead and right-click on it, click Properties, double-click IPv4, and this is where you can set up for a static IP address of your choice. Okay, so what I recommend, especially if you're trying to modify the network that is going back to the router, leave it on obtaining an IP address automatically. Come into your Start menu, search for your command prompt, go ahead and type in ipconfig, and you'll be able to see the address, the subnet, and the default gateway that the router is automatically giving you. So you can go ahead and assign your computer the exact same numbers that the command prompt is giving you. And that way you know that this address is available, and you can go ahead and statically assign this to your CMS. All right, so let's go ahead and log into our actual CMS now. So like I said, you can log into your CMS through the CMS Workstation software. You can log into it through the Internet Explorer. You can also log into it from your mobile phone. Right, the mobile phone is only going to give you live and playback, so I'm going to show you the computer interfaces. And so for today, we'll go ahead and use the Workstation software. So this is your login page. You want to go ahead and type in your server IP along with this port. Okay, and just so you know, this website is available to anyone who has a ACTI Member Center account, so you can actually log into this yourself. So cms2.acti.com, port 443. So if you were using the Internet Explorer, you could use cms2.acti.com, port 443, and make sure you have HTTP in the front. So if I hit Enter, you'll see the login interface here. So in order to log in, what you want to use is your ACTI Member Center account and password. So whatever username and password you registered with on the ACTI website in order to log in. If you haven't registered yet, go ahead and click on register here in the top right-hand corner. It takes about 5 minutes, it's free, and then you'll be able to access our demo websites. So once you do set up an account, what you want to do is use your email address, so for example, technical.support@acti.com, along with the password. Okay, so that will give you access to view the live view page and the playback page of the CMS. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and log in, and I will show you guys the interface of the CMS. If you've been using our MVR3 Windows software, you'll be able to see that the interface is actually very similar to the CMS. So the layout is about the same. It's just a couple different functionalities or how it's laid out, right? So on your MVR3, you would see a list of all your cameras, but on the CMS, you see all of the list of all your cameras categorized by every single MVR, okay, along with being having the options for the TV wall. Okay, but otherwise the interface is very similar, all clicking and dragging cameras out, it's all the same. If you do want a refresher on how to operate the CMS, more of the live and the playback, that is going to be in our next webinar in a little less than an hour. So it is basically the MVR3 Basic Functions webinar. You can also review that under the video clips section of our website, but we will go ahead and go over that later. So today what I'm going to do is mostly the setup of the CMS itself instead of the operations, which will be in a little less than an hour. So you'll see on our screen, we've got our EMAP, we've got our embedded website, we've got a TV wall controller, and we see all of our cameras in real time, along with the instant playback functions, right? But let's say you want to add a brand new TV wall into your CMS. So we can go ahead and go into the setup, and you'll see this TV wall tab. Right? So again, your TV wall could be on the same site, it could be on a different site. So if it's on, so depending on where it is, you are going to have to type in the IP address accordingly. So if it's off-site, you can type in the port forwarded address of your TV wall server. If it's on-site as your CMS, you can type in the internal address. Okay? And once you go ahead and add it in, you'll see them listed here under the TV wall setup list. So once you have your TV wall added in, you will see them listed here on the left-hand side under the TV wall subtab. So if you don't see it, you might have to scroll down, you might have to open up a tab, but they will be listed here on the left-hand side as long as you added them in successfully. All right, so in order to actually add a TV wall controller, let's go ahead and just add a new view altogether. All right. So let's say we want to add a brand new view, so we can create the view. We can call this tutorial, and I'm going to go ahead and put it under our camera section. So we can set it as the default view if that's the first thing that you want people to see when they log in. And I'm just going to start from scratch so that you guys can see how it's done. All right. So let's say this is a brand new view and you want to be able to add a TV wall on here. So what you want to do is you want to come up here to all of your edit view buttons, and if you ever forget what they mean, you can always hover over it and it will go ahead and tell you what the functionality of each button is. So if you click on this button here for the edit view, you'll be able to see these mini icons show up under every channel. So this one is to create a TV wall controller. So you want to go ahead and click on that, and you'll see your screen turn blue, and now this particular channel in the layout is now part of the TV wall controller. So after that's done, go ahead and click Save. So now what you can do is under your list of TV walls here, you can go ahead and click and drag your TV walls out onto the view. So you'll be able to see that I have two separate TV wall servers, meaning I have two other computers that are hosting the TV wall server, and they only have one monitor attached to each server. Okay, and on that monitor, for example, on my first monitor attached to my first TV wall, I currently have a view of 12 cameras. Okay, and when I want to add cameras into my view, all I have to do is I can click and drag my camera out onto the screen and go ahead and drag and drop. So I can decide to have a camera from MVR1 on channel 1 of that TV wall, and then I can decide that I want, let's say, camera 2 of MVR number 2 as the second slot. Okay. So you can really mix and match which cameras from which MVRs you want on your TV wall. And once that's set up and done, you want to go ahead and click on the Save View button at the top. Okay, and then you can click and drag more cameras out, etc. If you want to change any of the views, you can right-click on any of the views and tell it to change the layout. If you want to clear the content altogether and start from scratch, you can do that as well. Okay. So again, each server only has one monitor attached to it. So let's say you had more than one monitor attached to your TV wall, right? Because most of the time you've got maybe 8 to 12 monitors, and they're all going back to one particular TV wall server. So then what it's going to look like is very similar. It's still very straightforward. So you'll see, for example, in this particular scenario, I've got one TV wall here, a second TV wall server here, but on the first TV wall server, I've got 4 monitors attached to it. And on the second TV wall server, I've got 3 monitors attached to it. And on every monitor, I can change the layout that I want. Okay, so it really depends on what you want to see, how you want to set it up for your customer. It's all very customizable and very straightforward from there. So that is how to add a TV wall into your CMS. So let's talk about how to add MVRs into your CMS as well. So what you want to do is you want to come into the setup, come into the source button, and it's very similar to the TV wall. Depends on whether your MVRs are off-site or on-site, and you go ahead and type in the IP addresses accordingly. So you go ahead and click on the Add Source button and go ahead and name it what you'd like. You'll have a main address, which is your internal address, and an external address. Make sure before you add your MVR into the CMS that you've port forwarded every single MVR, regardless of where it's located, on-site, off-site. It does need to be port forwarded in order for the CMS to function properly. So you put your internal address as your main address, external address as the port forwarded address of your MVR. And after you're done, you'll see them here in your list. Okay. So you'll see them here on your setup list. You'll see them here under your camera list, and that's how you know all of your MVRs have been added and successfully into your CMS. Okay. So again, I can click on any of the MVRs, and it will go ahead and populate all the cameras that belong to that particular MVR. And this way, you don't have to log into any MVR individually anymore. They're all accessible straight from the CMS. Okay, and again, on my views, if I have my TV wall server there, I can put camera 1 from my first MVR, and then I can put camera 1 from my second MVR, and we can just really mix and match the views. Okay, so it just really varies what your customer wants to see. Maybe they want to see all the outdoor cameras or all of the parking lots across all of their sites on one particular view. You can go ahead and name your view accordingly and set it up accordingly. Again, the whole point of the CMS is to be able to control all of your MVRs from one place. So not only can you now customize all of your views across various MVRs, you can also set up your cameras, set up your MVRs all from one place. So instead of having to go on-site to change camera settings or anything like that, you can do so directly from the CMS. So what you want to do in order to set that up is you go into the Source button, and you can click on the arrow next to the MVR that you want to change, and you'll be able to see all of the usual MVR tabs, right? So usually all these tabs are here at the top when you log into your MVR. So you'll have your users, your storage, event, system, devices, right? So let's say we want to go ahead and change the shutter speed or the wide dynamic range of a particular camera, okay? So then we can click on the Devices tab here, click on All Cameras, and let's say we want to modify camera number 1. So if we click on camera number 1, you'll be able to see a very similar interface to what you would see in the MVR. You can change the name, you can find the serial number, firmware, and so if you come into the video tab, same place that you would find it in your MVR, you see your video adjustment button. So then under your video adjustment button, you can go ahead and change the wide dynamic range, you can change the shutter speed. So basically anything that you were able to access in the MVR, you can now go ahead and access through the CMS. All right. And so same thing, if you want to change the bit rates of your cameras, you can do so through the CMS. Okay, so remember that your bit rate, it's best if your bit rate is comparable to your resolution. So depending on the camera firmware, your bit rate should be either constant or variable. So the best settings in order to have the best amount of storage space and really making sure your bandwidth usage is efficient is actually to use the bitrate mode on variable as long as you have the option to cap off the maximum bitrate. So again, it depends on the camera firmware, it depends on the camera model. Not all of the cameras have this functionality. But as long as you change the bitrate mode to variable and you see a maximum bitrate function, it is best to leave it on variable and cap off the bitrate at a value similar to the resolution. So for example, right now our resolution is 1920 by 1080. So what does that mean? So you can open up your calculator, multiply the numbers together. You'll see that resolution is about 2 million pixels. That's where we get the number 2 megapixels. It's a 2 megapixel camera. So for 2 million pixels, your bit rate should be about 2, maybe maximum 3 megabits per second. So if I was using a resolution of 3 megapixels, my bit rate should be about 3, maybe 4 megabits per second. Okay, so that's a good estimate of what your settings should be. So let's say you don't get this maximum bitrate option when you put it on variable, then you want your setting to stay constant. And again, put your maximum bitrate somewhat similar to your resolution. Okay, and after everything is said and done, you go ahead and hit apply at the top. Okay, and again, all of the settings are very similar to what you would find in the MVR for the cameras. You can set up the motion from here as well. So if you want to set up motion boxes across various cameras, you can do so through the CMS at the MVR. Something a little bit different on the CMS and the MVR is setting up the schedule of the camera. So usually in the MVRs, the schedule tab will be up here. But if you want to set up the recording schedule for the cameras, you want to do it under the actual camera setup under this tab here. So you'll be brought into a very similar page as what you would see in the MVR. You can set up your camera for full-time, for motion recording, etc. And again, you can still copy the settings to various cameras. So if I hit the copy button, I can actually copy it across various MVRs, different cameras on those MVRs, etc. Okay, same thing with the basic settings, the video settings. So this basically, if you set up one camera at a particular site, then through the CMS, you could actually copy those video settings, those basic settings across cameras at all the other sites. It makes managing your system very straightforward. That's about it for what I wanted to cover for the camera settings. The other things I'll go over during the actual operations. So let's go ahead and move on and talk about users, all right? So you'll see there's a user tab here under the CMS, and there's also a user options here under your individual MVR. So the user tab under the MVR is talking about the users you need to that you want to set up that are allowed to log into this particular MVR. The user tab up here is talking about the users you want to set up to be able to log into the CMS to be able to have access to multiple MVRs across, and therefore multiple cameras across various sites. Okay, so let's say you have a school or you have a school district with MVRs at every particular school, at the elementary, at the middle school, at the high school. And let's say the principals of every site need to be able to see only their particular school. But let's say someone in the district administration office needs to be able to see everything, all schools, right? So that means for the MVR users, you want to put the principals under this user setup, but you want to put everyone at the district under the CMS user setup. So that way they can see everything while the principals are only are restricted to only seeing their particular MVR. So again, it's very straightforward. You'll see under users here for your MVR, you got your user groups, you got your users. You can have as many users under a particular user group as you want, and all of the permissions are located under the actual user groups. So for example, this is the same thing as what you would see in the MVR. You can restrict their various permissions, the basic ones. You can also restrict permissions per camera and the functionalities that they can do for every camera, okay? Or you can make it all the same. All right, but let's say you want to be able to set up users under the CMS to be able to see across various MVRs, right? So again, user groups, users, as many users as you want under a particular user group. Again, you can restrict the basic settings such as live and playback. You can also restrict specific permissions. So again, let's say someone at the administration's office, even though they want to see multiple MVRs, maybe there are certain sections of the district they're not in charge of, and you want to go ahead and turn off their ability to see that particular MVR. That can all be done through the CMS user permissions. Let's say there are certain cameras at certain MVRs you don't want them to be able to see. Just uncheck the device unified settings. Basically, that means you don't want the same settings across all cameras. Once you do that, you'll see all these tabs show up, and you'll be able to modify which cameras are not allowed to see at that particular MVR. So that can all be customized as well. So it really just depends on what kind of permissions, what kind of hierarchy there is. So just discuss it with your customer, and you'll be able to set it up that way. Once you do have all of your settings set up, right, you have all your users, you add it in your sources, you add it in your TV walls. After everything is said and done, you want to come into the System tab here and make sure you make a backup file. So this will save all of your source names, all of the users that you set up. It saves basically everything except your licenses on the CMS, right? And of course, it's not going to save your recordings because that's all at the MVR itself. The CMS is basically just an interface for you to be able to see all of that. So it takes not even 5 seconds. Just go ahead and save a backup file somewhere where your computer has access to. And now, if, God forbid, if anything were to happen to your CMS, you can come back in and restore that file. And that way, it saves you lots of time trying to reset everything up. Make sure that you also take a snapshot of the license keys that belong to your CMS, as the backup file does not save the license keys. So go ahead and take a picture of this page, and that way if anything were to happen, you can go ahead and call tech support, and we can help you put your licenses back into your system. Okay, and like I mentioned before, your licenses for the CMS are per camera. So let's say you have 2 MVRs with 10 cameras each. You need to purchase 1 license key with the capability for 20 channels in order to be able to add the 10 cameras on each of those 2 MVRs. Okay, so you've got, and then all you have to do is type in your license key, type in your account and password, which is your ACTI Member Center account and password, so the email and password you set up, and hit apply, and it'll go ahead and register it for you. Let's say your CMS, for whatever reason, temporarily does not have internet access, you can go ahead and do offline registration, which means you need to come into the ACTI website first, come to support license registration, make sure that you have your license key along with the MAC address of your CMS. It will email you a .lic file, which you can then put on USB, bring over to your CMS, and you can copy or import over that file into the CMS and register it that way. So the same thing with the MVRs. If you needed to suddenly add a license key into your MVR, it's very simple. You just come into source, your MVR, into system, and license, and you can register it, the license key directly on your MVR should you need to add more cameras to your MVR. You can also make backup files from your MVR as well. So basically, almost all of the settings that are available on the MVR are available for you to modify through the CMS. One of the only settings that you cannot change on the MVR through the CMS is the actual MVR port, and obviously the network system. You can't change the network. That will have to be done at the MVR itself. So let's say you need to port forward your CMS. You already set up the network. The default HTTP address of the CMS that you need to port forward is 80. If you do need to change that, all you have to do is come into your icons here at the bottom. You want to double-click on your CMS administrator tool. And it will pop up with this administrator tool. This is where you can go ahead and change the port of your CMS. So as you can see, my CMS is using port 88. That is about all I had for the CMS setup. Thanks, everyone, for joining ACTI's CMS and TV Wall setup webinar today. If you guys do have any further questions, please feel free to email us at technical.support@acti.com. Feel free to also follow up with your sales representative. And everybody have a great day.